VAATV, Vietnamese American Arizona Television.
Hello everyone, welcome back to VAATV.com, to the real estate world, and especially to the beginner who wants to do an investment and earn some profit. There are so many situations out there, and knowledge is the power. And that's why we have Scott Bartlowe from SF Fuller Real Estate Investment come here to provide all the information needed to start the investment from small to large. Hi, Scott. How's
Hi.
the weather out there?
It's muggy and warm today.
Maybe it's going to be a storm.
Maybe a storm.
Yeah.
We need it.
So we missed 1 week. Last week, we have a lot of questions from the audience. They like to know more in the real estate for the residential versus commercial.
Okay.
Because there's many pro and con that they want to know from your point of view.
Yes, and I think as we had talked in some of the previous shows, that residential real estate is where most folks get started when they're doing real estate investing. And it's because most of us are used to renting property at one point or another in our lives. And so that as you buy properties, usually the first thing you buy is a home. And so it makes that transition easy to move into residential real estate investing and becoming a landlord.
You have more money, you buy another house,
exactly,
bigger house, then you let the other house rent it.
Exactly.
So, so you think that the beginner usually that they easily to do the renting for the residential, but the question they raised out there that they usually have headache from the tenant. You know, a lot of situation that they cannot solve.
Okay, and that is a fairly common thing to have happen. Usually it's because you don't have enough education yet on how to handle a bad tenant. So some of the things that I want to start with this evening is how do you make sure that you've got good tenants? And if you have a bad tenant, how do you handle that? The first thing I want to do is I just want to point out a document here that I have with me. It's called the Arizona Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. And
Where
this,
can they,
it's a free document. You can go to the Arizona Department of Housing website, and the email address for that website is www.housing.az.gov. And this is a free document that you can get, but it covers all of the various legal aspects of landlord and tenant relations. This is something that anybody that has any intention of ever becoming a landlord, they need to get a copy of this, because it will help them follow the U.S. government federal fair housing laws. And if you violate some of those laws, you can get into substantial trouble, and there's fines. But this will keep you on the road to it. And then I'm gonna refer you to another website. This one is at Castler Law. I believe you can also get this same book on Amazon.com, but it's called Arizona Landlord's Desk Book. The Arizona Landlord Tenant Act. This is simply the law. The desk book is filled with various forms and legal opinions, and helps you walk through different situations. So I believe it runs around $25, a little bit cheaper than going to see an attorney, and it can help you bridge the gap on some of those things. But I would really suggest anybody that's looking to gain any experience at the front end that they get both of those and have them in hand before they even start talking to a tenant.
I see. So do you think, like, I know, like, there's a management out there that can help them manage the real estate investment as well?
Yes,
right?
yes. Property managers, they do charge a fee to manage your property for you. And typically it's anywhere from 5 to 10% is what they charge per month. And then there may be add-on fees that they charge. But usually what I see is that with most investors, when they're starting off, if they have a single family home or just a small apartment building, they tend to want to manage it themselves. And it's a great way to learn how you properly manage your own property. Later on, if you get a lot of properties, you may want to have the management company, but certainly on the front end, it gives you an opportunity where you can learn, you're hands-on, you actually see how your investment's doing. One of the first things that I always suggest to folks is get a good lease.
Okay.
In Arizona, the law requires for a lease
Mm-hmm.
to be enforceable, it has to be written,
Mm-hmm.
signed by both parties. And of course, you know, the fees, the
Mm-hmm.
monthly payments are all specified in there. And of course, signed by both parties.
I see.
That way, if anything happens, you know, it's essentially, it's a contract.
Mm.
And if one party violates that contract and you end up having to go in front of a judge,
Mm-hmm.
it's written, and those are the rules that have to be followed. That in the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act.
So where can they get the if they a single landlord, where can they get the lease?
Well, there's a
Copy
couple
the
of
lease?
different places. They can
Mhm.
go online.
Mhm.
There's a number of law firms here in town
Mhm.
that are real estate related, and they will have some sample leases on there. You can buy a sample lease, and then
Mhm.
once again, that Arizona Landlord Desk Book,
Mm.
that's another good place where you can go.
And then you can kind of like put in the lease whatever you think is important.
There,
That cover.
absolutely,
Right.
but it has to adhere to
Mhm.
the standards that are required under the Arizona
Mhm.
Landlord Tenant Act. So you can't put anything, for example,
Mhm.
the Landlord Tenant Act says that as far as security deposits, you can
Mhm.
only have 1.5 months
Mhm.
of
One
security
and a half
deposit.
month of the
A security
deposit.
deposit.
Mhm.
So you can't just put into your lease 2 months,
Mm.
for example. That's unenforceable, but 1.5 months. So you have to, it's a balancing act to make sure that your lease is adhering to the legal requirements.
I see. So but then the landlord can determine by themselves how much more they can charge, or is there a certain thing like they can never charge more than what is supposed to be? Like beside the deposit, they can charge like first month, last month, things like that.
Generally speaking, what I see on residential is they
Mhm.
charge first month and the security deposit.
Mm.
Now, in addition to the regular security deposit, which is considered a refundable deposit,
Mhm.
you may have non-refundable deposits. For
Ah.
example, if someone has a dog,
Pet, yes.
if someone has special needs of some sort, if someone, you know, if part of
Mhm.
the requirements for them to move in, they want to paint a wall.
Mm.
You know, most of the time we paint walls in apartments so that they're pretty neutral, so that they appeal to a wide variety of tenants.
Right.
But I've had tenants who
They want
they
to change
painted,
themselves. Yeah.
yeah, they changed it, and
Uh-huh.
they used that chalkboard
Uh-huh.
paint so that the kids could write on the wall
Uh-huh.
with chalk.
Yeah.
Well, that's all fine and dandy, and it's not damaging the wall, but there is
Mhm.
an expense after they move out
Yeah.
to get that reprimed and repainted, and it's far above what a normal paint repainting
So how
might
do you
include.
reply to that when they request to change the color themselves? I mean,
What I in my leases,
Mhm.
and I have tenants in my leases, what I require is that if
Mhm.
they want to make a modification to the
Mhm.
property,
Mhm.
they have to notify me in writing.
Ah,
I have to give approval before they do it, not
I see.
after they do it.
right.
So I get a written approval.
Mhm.
I look at it, and in some cases, I've turned them down.
Mm.
Some of the things they were asking for were
Mhm.
either
Even in their own expense.
even in their own expense, because
Mhm.
you know I had one tenant who wanted to do some things that involved some electrical work, and I didn't want that
Oh,
done.
because yeah.
Because you, at the end of the lease, you got to look at being able to turn that property back into something that appeals to everybody in general.
I see. Yeah, because sometimes when they stay in there, they want themselves. They want like certain special to them, right? The way
Exactly.
they're living. Yeah. And then like I know like those the regular tenant. We know like they follow the rule, they follow the protocol, procedure, all that. But that sometimes you don't know. You know, when the attendant approach to you, they pretty good. And then down the line, there's something happen, whatsoever, they turn different. Like they start not paying rent, they start late, and they start like do something not notifying to you.
Right.
Then how are you? Do we have like a certain law that we come and inspect or anything like that? Yeah.
Let's
Mhm.
back up just a little bit, because
Mhm.
you've got
Mhm.
a bunch of very good questions in there. The first thing that I always look
Mhm.
at when I'm screening tenants
Uh-huh.
is I get a written application from them,
Mhm.
and I look the application over. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for obviously their name, where they're living at currently, what's the situation,
Mhm.
that they're living in, are they being evicted?
Ah,
Do I want to bring a tenant
Yeah.
in that's being evicted? Because that's a sure sign that he or she has
Uh-huh.
financial problems.
right, right.
And so I don't want to take somebody else's problem on.
Yes,
So I look
exactly.
for those types of things. Then I require the tenant to pay for a tenant screening.
Okay.
And it generally includes a credit check, an eviction check, and a little bit of rental history.
Rental history.
So that you can see, if most of the time, if somebody has a good rental history and a solid credit check, more likely than not, they're going to continue on. There's occasions where people lose their jobs or they have a health problem. That creates a different situation, and that may create a situation where they're not paying the rent. But at least from the onset, I do the best that I can to make sure that I have a good quality tenant the day that they sign the lease.
How about the special situation like they never rented before, they live with a family and now they want to start themselves in their own, then how's that?
Well, I do a couple of things on that. First off, once again, I start, and the key here that I really want to impress on everybody is develop good procedures, because as I was saying before, you want to make sure that you're adhering to the fair housing laws from the federal government and from the state. So if you do the same procedures all of the time and you follow those without variation, it keeps you on the right road. You can say that you're treating everybody the same. That's the first step. The second step is when you have that person who's making their first lease application, you still collect all of their information. So, and you may or may not have issues with their credit. If you feel like this is somebody that is new to renting,
Right.
and you have a concern over them, one of the things that you can always do is you can screen them for how much they make.
The money, yeah, the
Because
pay stuff. And all that.
exactly, because the last thing you want to do is, let's say that you've got somebody who's making $1,200 a month. It makes no sense to put them into a $1,500 a month apartment.
Exactly.
They just can't afford it.
Exactly.
Now they have a roommate. Now you've got two people that you need to screen. But you need to make sure that you've got sufficient income, and it not just to cover the rent, but people have to be able to turn their power on. They have to be able to buy groceries.
Yes.
You know, those types of
Utility,
things. They have
expand.
all of those types of things. So you're looking at it a little bit from a budget standpoint. And the last thing, because you don't want to be in a position where you're taking all of their money and you're actually going to force them into a bad situation.
Right. So the qualify got to be 3 times of the amount,
You know,
the rental amount.
One thing about it, if you've got a young person who's really just starting to get out, and I've seen this in sometimes in Tempe, because you've got a lot of college kids.
Yeah, college.
And they don't have any type of history. You can have mom and dad sign, co-sign. So that you can look for some of those other family members who can step up to kind of support them. And, you know, and as we talked last time, you're always looking for ways to reduce your own risk. Your risk here is you're renting it to somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience, paying their monthly rent, but yet we all start at that same point at one time or another.
Right.
And so they have to have those opportunities.
Yeah, because it's looked like the situation arrive when things happen. So in this one, they gotta review them, every single thing. Let's say if like I see it's so much wording.
Yep, there's a lot in there.
So then gotta take time, right, to understand it.
Yes.
So that you can act accordingly when things happen.
Exactly.
If they are late for 5 days, 6 days on the contract, whatever is said, we have to follow, right?
Exactly right. And that's going back to this other one, this Arizona Landlord Desk Book that I spoke about.
Yeah.
The nice thing on that is it does have timelines. It does have the notices. Like, for example, if somebody doesn't pay their rent, you can give them a 5-day notice for non-payment of rent. Well, where do you get that form? The law doesn't have the form, but that attorney's desk book has the form.
Okay. Is that a fee?
You can buy that desk book. You can download it from Amazon.
Okay.
I think it's $25.
Oh, okay.
And
but then you can use all the
and
time.
you can save it. Yep, it'll save as a PDF.
Okay. There's a few form, like a different form.
Yes,
right?
and that desk book, if you were to print it out, it's over 500 pages. So I mean, you know, it'd be a document.
So
like that.
Arizona law, you said 5 days for notice non-payment, or 3 days?
Yes, 5 days.
5 days, right? And then what about 30 days? Any situation?
Well, what I would say is don't let it get that far.
Mm.
The law's got some specifics to it, and once again, that Arizona desk book, it's got the correct forms. You can go there and get the forms. But after 5 days, if somebody hasn't paid, you can actually go to the court. Most of the courts and city courts,
Right.
they call them justice courts in some cases, and they have a magistrate that's in there. But before you take that case to the court, you want to make sure you've got the correct documents.
Right.
A lot of the courts already have a packet put together for
Right.
the eviction process.
Right.
So as a new or as a landlord, go pick up that package and familiarize yourself with it as you start the process. There's people out there that'll help you if you have questions. So
yeah. I know, like for the situation, like when the person rent the place, they on the contract, whatever is stated, if we follow that, because there's a situation, let's say something that they have to act on, like if the property been rented in a very good, excellent condition, and then down the line it has been destroyed. Is there a law or any way that we can kick them out right away?
Well, there's several things that you can do. The Arizona Landlord Tenant Act, it allows for landlords to inspect their property. And I've been a renter myself, and I've had my landlord give me a notice. Typically, it's 2 days.
Oh, okay.
They have to give you a 2-day written notice. They're coming in.
To come in.
And they're going to inspect the property. And so what you can do as the landlord is you can come in and you can look at your property and you go, wow, there's a hole in the wall.
Right.
How did that hole in the wall get
Right.
there? And if you see that they're abusing your property and you've got a good lease, you can start proceedings to evict them. They can't destroy your property.
Yeah.
And of course, you're holding the security deposit, but you don't want the damage to get to the point where the damage exceeds the security deposit.
Yeah. Yeah, for that. So I know, like, that's a lot of concerning in the whoever want to invest into residential, because they seen so many situations, and it's none of them. Sometimes the tenant use the what you call it, the tenant and landlord law, but it's always protect the tenant more than the landlord.
Well,
so
what I would say is this. The Landlord Tenant Act is set up so that it's to treat both sides fairly. As long as both sides are following it. And that's one of the reasons that I highly encourage landlords to get a copy of this at the onset, as well as that landlord desk book, so that they can see what the procedures are. Don't let things get out of hand for a long period of time. If you feel like you have a problem, you should deal with it as soon as the problem comes up.
Which means that either ask the attorney office to process the paperwork, or to yourself, then you can go to the courtroom and get the package, right?
And sometimes it may be just as simple as going out and seeing the tenant and go, your lease says that you can't have a dog.
Right.
You need to get the dog out of here now. If you don't get the dog out of here, both the lease and the Landlord Tenant Act are pretty clear what the landlord's abilities to handle that situation are.
Okay, so then it shouldn't be any much of the worry for if we invest in the real estate and come to the situation like that.
Well, it's like we've talked about, knowledge is power. And so if you understand how the process works, generally speaking, you can have somebody out of there the same month. There are certain types of situations where you can get somebody evicted much quicker. For example, I use the crime-free housing lease addendum as part of my leases, and it says in there that if somebody is involved in sales of drugs, domestic violence, crimes of violence, gang activity, that we can do a 24-hour emergency eviction.
Eviction. Oh, wow. Okay. So the procedure and all that, I mean, like they still have to get to whoever that helped them, right?
You'll still need to take, in any case of evicting somebody, you'll still need to go in front of a magistrate. But generally speaking, on those types of things, they're used to seeing it, and they understand why there's a need for expediency.
So that's why a lot of people say, like, easily I mean, when we rent it out, easy, but what we cannot, like, it's difficult to evict the person out when
Right.
they're in the situation because drag on too many stuff and wasting so much time and all that. Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to what I was saying before.
Mhm.
The landlord can set the tone.
Uh-huh.
If the landlord is proactive and they're
Yeah.
actively checking their property to make sure that the tenants are not doing anything destructive to the property, they can check it at the first sign.
Right.
And it's far better to get it while the problem is small than
Mhm.
allow the problem to grow over time.
Okay. Okay. So like I know like I know like sometimes they have soft heart, you know, when they come in and then the person say okay they will take care of it, but like it has never been done.
Right. You know, the best thing that I can possibly say is if you're investing in a property, you need to treat it like a business and make business decisions, not personal decisions.
I see.
I had a property in Tempe, and for 10 years, I had a number of different tenants, and it turned over. I probably had about 15 different tenants because usually they would rent in groups of 2 or 3. But over the course of 10 years, like I said, I probably had about 15 people. I went through the same procedures where every single time that they came in, they had to fill out the application, they had to get the credit checks, all of those types of things, and then sign. And from the onset, I would set the rules, and they would know that I'm the landlord. I'm going to enforce it. I'd give them a copy of this.
Good idea.
And tell them from the onset, read this. I read this. This is how the law works. This is how,
wow.
and I'd go through the lease with them. But it helped me to avoid, like I said, I never had a single late payment in 10 years.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's good.
I mean, on one occasion, I did have a young lady who was renting, and she was in a situation where her mother had passed away and she was out of state. She would call me at home to let me know that she was going to be late with the rent payment. But she put it into my court where I could say, when you get back in town, just call me. We'll settle up then. And never had any other problems before or after.
Well, that's very nice. That's really lucky you, because I heard so many stories out there with sometimes the tenant take advantage of the law right there, and when they don't have the rent, then they create issue, they create problem, they make excuses, and then they make things against the landlord. You know, there's a lot of situation, false here, fix there. And lie here, like, I mean, there's a lot of things that. But
if you're following your own procedures, and if there's, let's say that somebody says, well, my air conditioning's out. I usually keep a contract with an air conditioning service because air conditioning, plumbing issues, electrical issues, those are the things that cause you the most problems.
Right.
And they can become the biggest expenses over time. So I try to nip those types of things as quickly as I can. And I tell the tenants, if you have a problem with anything, you need to get hold of me and not just let it go.
Right.
And then you can document it. And once again, if you've been in that kind of an operating mode and your tenant is suddenly going, well, you know, I've got a leak in the bathroom, and you walk in and you see mold, you know that that's not an overnight issue.
Exactly.
That's been going on for months, so they have not been following the lease.
So what we're going to do that then?
Well, obviously you're going to need to make your repairs, but if they're using that situation as a reason for why they're not paying rent, you can demonstrate to the judge that you make every effort. They've never reported it. They're not taking care of your property. And now they're just trying to use that as an excuse for.
So which means like we start the process of eviction, then we talk with the judge about it when they don't pay the money.
If that's their only reason for withholding
but during
rent.
that time, we still have to make everything repair and fix things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the problem of do you think, how about if they are the one that create those issues?
That's always an interesting situation.
Like the contract, like the contractor, you know, the technician indicated down what happened and all that.
You know, and that's just it. You need to have good people that you trust. And I use licensed contractors because they can recognize things. If somebody has deliberately damaged
There's something. Yeah.
something, there's telltale signs, and you'll need a statement from that contractor to
Right.
show it. When it's been deliberately damaged, that's no longer an issue of maintenance or repair or anything. That's an issue of, that's a criminal issue. It's criminal damage. They're damaging your property. And if they're damaging your property as a subterfuge to avoid paying rent, the judge can see through that. But you need to provide evidence.
But I mean, like all that, of course, we're gonna get to the church. But during that time, it's all the headache, all the time, all the everything you have to deal with.
Unfortunately, it does happen. But that's why I'm a firm believer. Set up good procedures.
Yes.
You're gonna screen out a lot of the bad people at the front end. On occasion, you'll still have somebody who starts off as a good tenant, but for whatever reason has issues.
Yeah.
But what you're trying to do is, instead of having a whole bunch of them, you're trying to minimize
them. Yeah, because rather don't let them late for so many months. Then it's going to be like a bigger issue. If they late 1 month, then have to solve right away, right? Because that should be.
Yeah, and I've heard landlords say, "Well, I'll let them catch up."
That's why, yes, a lot of things happen like that.
I have never, ever, ever seen
like you
anybody
said, like
catch up.
Business decision, not your personal decision.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we always like link into personal decision when we see the situation.
You want to be sympathetic. You want to be kind to them. But on the other hand, you know, from a practical standpoint, you know that they have a certain income, and if they get behind, oftentimes they don't have enough room to take extra out of their income to catch up. So it's a losing proposition. All you're doing is you're just kicking the can down the road. Far better to make a business decision now that's fair to you, fair to them, and get the property back into a position where you can lease it again to somebody who is paying.
Yeah, that's true. So we're done with the residential and the procedure and how to avoid bad tenant. Now, what the moving to the commercial investment, any situation that they need to know.
Well, with commercial,
I mean, like there's a small commercial and there's large commercial.
Yes,
right?
yes. Commercial real estate leases do not follow any particular procedure. In other words, you know, we talked about the Arizona Residential Landlord Tenant Act. There is no such act that comprehensively covers commercial. Commercial real estate has some pretty sophisticated leases. I mean, I've represented landlords and tenants both for a long time, and I've had leases that were 3 or 4 pages long, and I've had leases that were 80 or 90 pages long. And so every situation is different. For example, let's suppose that you're renting a retail space, and the tenant needs alterations to the property.
Right.
So who's going to pay for those alterations? All of those types of things get negotiated.
Right.
In many leases, commercial leases, the tenant is responsible. Once the lease begins, they're responsible for the air conditioning system.
I see.
So it behooves the tenant at that point, who's supposed to be a little more sophisticated than the guy that's renting an apartment. He wants to be able to bring his own inspectors in and check that air conditioning unit before he takes over responsibility for it.
The renting, right?
Yes, exactly right.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then you may have things like who pays for janitorial services, who pays for exterior lighting, who pays for cleaning the parking lot, who's responsible for locking the building when the last business leaves. So there's a whole variety of issues that you don't have with residential properties that you do with commercial property. Exactly. And often cases, what I see with the residential or the commercial leases, excuse me, is that they're customized for a particular location.
I see. So like when they lease it or they rent it, is there a certain area that they have to follow? You know, like you cannot go so high, you cannot go so low, you cannot go so high on the lease amount.
There's
there-
nothing that I've seen
Yeah,
that
so
precludes
so
it.
it doesn't matter.
It can be
Say
negotiated.
negotiated.
Yep.
Okay.
We're,
Like
you know,
in the area. Like,
yes.
Like,
Let me kind of give you an example.
okay.
You know, you may have an apartment complex,
Yeah.
and so they advertise 1-bedroom apartments are renting for $1,500 a month,
Right.
and you may have a commercial complex next door with offices, executive suites, and those types of things. They may advertise that the price of their property is at $22 per square foot.
Oh, okay.
So they use a different amount, and say you're renting just a little small office at $22 per square foot. You multiply that $22 out times the 100. That's the annual lease. Divide that by 12. That's the monthly lease. Now, there's a variety of different types of leases under the commercial side, and I won't get into all of them, but one of the most common ones that you hear about is a gross.
Yes, gross.
And then and that's pretty much where the tenant is renting from a commercial landlord, and he takes care of a lot of the services. You may
Himself.
have
Oh,
yes,
okay.
it's included in the rent.
Okay.
On the far end of things, you may have what's called a triple net lease.
Yes.
And triple net, you'll see it written N.
NNN. Yes.
And that comes up with a per square foot price, once again, on an annual basis. And you may see it listed as $22 a square foot, $6 a square foot triple net.
A triple net.
So that's $6. You multiply that 100 square feet we talked about times 6. That's $600. You divide it out by the 12. That's $50 a month. So what's included in that is a share
A share of
the
repair.
no of the maintenance of the property,
Okay.
which may include fixing the lights, cleaning the parking lot, janitorial services.
Right.
Includes insurance
Okay.
on the property.
Right.
Now, each individual tenant will need their own liability insurance, and that's listed on the lease, and then the property tax. So, you know, if you're located in Maricopa County, you can look at what the tax is each year, and the during the term of a lease, that $22 a square foot, it may stay the same for a year or two. There may be an escalator clause built into it, so after 2 years, it goes up 3 or 5%, something along those lines.
Right.
And then every year, that triple net will change because the tax and the insurance costs and the other costs for taking care of the property, they may change. So those that will change
based on
over
the
time.
market rate,
Yep.
right?
Well,
or what you call it, because I know like triple net is not the fixed. The triple net will be a difference per year.
Yes, exactly right. Because well, we're coming up to tomorrow is September 1st.
Right.
So here in September, the county will be sending out the tax bills.
Right, for the October. Yeah.
And they'll be due October 1st. So
Right.
when you get that new tax bill, you go, oh, wow. You know, last year, this property, the tax on it was $5,000. This year, it may be $5,200.
Yeah.
So,
Increase a little bit.
so you need to be able to pass that on in the triple net lease.
So now let me ask you, the triple net, you say including the maintenance for the whole place, the utility for the whole place, the taxes for the whole place. What if any individual unit at that time have some kind of repair to be done? Then will that be shared equally?
No, it goes. It's up to that individual, that
So
tenant,
that depends on the it's
on
not
the
included
situation.
in,
There are certain things in the lease that the landlord will be responsible for.
Yeah.
There are certain things that the tenant will be responsible for.
Oh, okay.
Let's go back to that air conditioner.
Yeah.
Remember I said that
Yes,
they're going to be
the tenant have a
responsible
right.
for it. They have the right to have it inspected.
Yeah.
So they get the inspection done. The
That
air
is working good.
it's
and
working.
moving
It's
forward,
working
they
perfect.
take care.
The air conditioner says, but now 2 years into the lease, all of a sudden it stops working,
Okay.
and that is the tenant's responsibility. And you may get in there and you may find the tenant has never changed the filter on that in 2 years.
Oh, yeah. That's important. Yes.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So then that's why if that's then written on the contract, the lease contract, that if something happened like that, they're responsible for the repair. If
exactly right.
And that's nothing to do with the triple net. Even they pay the triple net, right?
That's
something different.
The triple net is, imagine you've got 10 different tenants.
10 detail, yeah.
So you take the expenses for your insurance, you take the expenses for your taxes, and you take the expenses for they call it the common area.
Yeah, common area maintenance.
CAM.
Okay.
But you take those expenses, you total them, and then you divide them out among the 10.
Among the town, okay. And that amount going to be adjusted yearly, annually, right?
Exactly.
Like sometimes if it collect them for that amount, but down the line, the money received less than that, then they will get some kind of credit. If it's more than that, then they have to pay more.
And every year you'll get, the landlord should be generating a notice to let the tenants know, all right, here's where it went, and provide them the actual numbers.
Ah, okay, yeah. So so easy to whoever owned the commercial or lease, even lease, that the triple net is everything included, and it's more than, because if it's gross, then the gross amount will be higher into fixed, and it's include everything. And then for the triple net, then they lower the square footage, and then they add on to a separate triple net per annual.
Right. And then there's several types of leases that are in between. Some that will pick up, some in some cases they may provide a number of utilities, or they may say you need to provide your own internet and telephone. There is kind of a unique lease that's in some of the big retail centers. And you know how we have seasonal variations when it comes to retail. This is kind of an oversimplification, but imagine at Christmas time, retailers are doing really well. And 4th of July, retailers aren't doing quite as well. So what that landlord will do is they will have a lease, and they will ask for, what are your monthly sales? So that they reduce the rate in the summer, and they raise it in the winter when it's more profitable.
Wow. That's
so there's a variety of different types of leases. The key thing to remember there is that you can, especially on the commercial side, you can really customize the lease to suit that particular property.
Oh, I see. So
it's not a one size fits all.
I mean, like, I think if for something like that, best don't handle it yourself. You gotta have somebody experience and expertise for that situation to handle for you.
Yes.
Right?
And while I can help people out as far as amending a lease, I really recommend that if you've got some specialized circumstances, and you're talking about some of the commercial leases can go up to 15 years.
Oh.
So you need to have somebody that's got legal expertise at writing contracts, and that's going to a real estate attorney
and whatever. So let's say if after the lease supposed to be renewal, and they delay in renewing, then what happened with other terms and everything? It's become month to month, or what?
Well, let's go back to the residential.
Residential, okay.
Because here in the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act, it says in those circumstances, unless it's already prescribed in the lease, then it reverts to a month-to-month periodic lease.
I see.
On the case of a commercial, if it generally has in there what they call a holdover period. In other words, say the lease, we're at the end of the month tonight.
Right.
So at midnight tonight, if I'm leasing a property from you and I haven't made arrangements to either extend the lease to go month to month, and the provision in the lease says no holdovers, it means at midnight tonight, that property reverts back to you, even if my goods are in there.
So which means that they cannot enter the property.
Well, if it becomes a matter of, if they've got the key and you haven't done anything, you can allow them to get their stuff out of there.
Oh,
but
I see.
most of the time, you really need to be on top of that as you approach the end of a lease period
Uh-huh.
and determine, is this person gonna, or this business, are they gonna move? They're gonna extend?
Uh-huh.
Do we need to write a new lease?
Oh.
But you don't have that same
Mm-hmm.
flexibility that you do with a residential lease.
Right. With a residential lease, when they have a yearly lease and they didn't renew it, so it's turned into month to month, then the rent amount can fluctuate it, right? It can up and down. It's not going to be included as on the previous lease, correct?
You can change it, but
Mm-hmm.
remember, in here they prescribe that if you're making a change,
Uh-huh.
you need to give either side needs to give the other side a 30-day notice.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Or,
okay, just like let's say, okay, next month your lease gonna have like $50 more. I mean, your monthly rent gonna be $50 more, and because they are currently in month to month, then 30-day, then they think, oh, I don't like it, then they can move out.
Well,
right?
and in most cases in the lease, they have a 30-day provision. So let's say that I'm renting an apartment from you.
Mm-hmm.
And today, you give me a 30-day notice
of the rate change.
Of the rate change.
Yes.
So I need to move quickly and go, I'm giving you a
stay.
30-day notice that I'm moving out.
Or you pay. Right?
Or I pay.
Yeah. Okay. So they need to act that. By the end of that, if they don't follow it, they don't even pay the new rate, and they don't move out, and what happened?
Well, in that case, if they don't follow things, then you go back to the eviction process.
Yeah. Okay. That's very good. I think a lot of things that we cover regarding to this, and it's really set the peace of mind for the investor. I mean, the investor sometimes they're not like a type of, like, they have a lot of money. Either they work really hard and try to do some kind of investment, and if they don't do the right thing, they invest into something and they're probably been destroyed by the tenant, or that's going to be really, really bad, isn't it?
Exactly
if they don't
right.
get enough of the knowledge that it's supposed to. So I mean, like, I know that there's a lot to cover, but like it looks like right now we have to see them next time again, because the time is up. We start early.
It's already over.
Yeah. You see, it's so fast. I mean, like, there's a lot of
information to cover on this.
But I think whatever your explanation, part one by one, would be more easily for their understand and follow. But the main things that you mentioned is like they have to kind of do their work. They have to, whoever the investor want to be an investor, they gotta understand it. They cannot trust anybody do it for you. You gotta understand what is it, how to be a tenant, how to be a landlord, and seeing many different scenario on the tenant and know how to act upon it.
Yep.
Right.
And don't let it drag out.
Yeah.
You hit it on the point, on the head. There's a lot of folks out there who are starting to invest. And why do you invest?
Right.
You invest so that you can build up your family's wealth over time.
Yeah.
And it's a step-by-step process.
Right.
So you need to take action. You need to understand how the laws work and what your requirements are legally as a landlord, so that you can protect yourself and run your business properly.
Yes. Very well. Thank you so much, Scott, for
thank you.
The time that with your explanation. It's really helpful to us. Myself, and I think everybody out there will really appreciate, because now they get some knowledge in like how to be a landlord, how to do a right investment, and certain situation, what to do with it.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of questions after that for the next time show that they're going to raise up and ask you.
All righty.
So
well,
be
terrific.
Ready for it.
Be happy to answer the questions. We all start at the same place with no knowledge.
Yes.
I've been there, and I've seen other realtors actually who've made the same mistakes.
You never mentioned how did you get into real estate. Did you mention that? I know that you experienced for many years. How do you first get started?
Well, I'll tell you something. I used to be a police officer.
Oh.
And I was a police officer in the city of Tempe. And if you drive through Tempe, there's a lot of apartment buildings.
Oh, yes.
One of the things that Tempe's police department had was, we refer to it as calls for service, where officers have to go out to the apartment buildings. Population's more dense, but you've got all kinds of more people in those smaller settings. And that was a significant amount of energy and expense that the department had to keep officers in those areas. There was a great movement towards reducing crime in those neighborhoods. And I happen to be the crime prevention sergeant, and we helped get a couple of different ordinances written, crime prevention through environmental design, and then we went through a process where we educated a lot of the apartment complexes on how to screen people, how to make their properties safer. You know, there's a lot of properties that I drive by now when I go to Tempe. I look at them, and they've got wrought iron fences around them so that people just can't walk into the property in the middle of the night. There's better lighting in the parking lots.
That's good. Yeah.
So, understanding what was going on in the apartments, and then when I started work at the brokerage I'm at, which S.J. Fowler Real Estate.
Just one.
I've only been with one brokerage, going on 18 years.
Oh, that's nice.
But S.J. Fowler Real Estate, we're the number one brokerage when it comes to selling apartments. Our niche is kind of from duplexes up to about 100 units.
Wow.
But it kind of gave me a jump start on understanding how that business worked.
That's really nice, because you are really know inside out, like a zoning, ordering, everything else. Anybody, if you guys have want to invest into housing or commercial, think of Scott. For Scott, what's
Bartlowe.
Bartlowe. Yes, you can let them know the phone number, but you can actually we have the screen pop up, but like where they can reach you when they have a question.
You can call my cell phone. It's 480-213-7691, and I answer my phone.
All right, yes. Yeah, Scott's pretty good. And texting too, right?
Yes.
And the question,
Yes. I mean, you know, I enjoy helping people out. I don't expect to.
That's really nice with your background. Yes. You know, I really appreciate all the police out there, you know, do a great job helping the community.
Well, the idea is to make it safer for everybody.
Yes. Really appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much. And we're going to see Scott next time. Thanks for watching VAATV with Scott Bartlowe.
Bye-bye.
Linh Vi xin cảm ơn sự theo dõi của tất cả quý vị trong những giây phút vừa qua. Chương trình VAATV xin kính chào, tạm biệt và xin hẹn gặp lại quý vị vào lần phát hình kỳ tới. Mọi chi tiết về thông tin thương mại và bảo trợ, xin mời quý vị hãy liên lạc về địa chỉ email vaatelevision@gmail.com và số điện thoại là 480-289-9816, 480-289-9816, website vaatv.com và vaaznews.com. Xin kính chào.